like to welcome to this episode of the podcast Tom Templar. He is from the band Green Lung. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, how you doing?
I am good, man. How are you?
I am good. Finally about to go back on tour after too long. Finally getting a record out after having recorded it in February. Just ready to go, really.
Awesome, awesome. We're going to talk about the new record in a minute. But I just wanted to I became aware of you guys back in, I want to say 2021. I work for Total Rock. One of their DJs. I was their social media marketing person. And we voted you Band of the Month of September that year.
I do remember that. Yeah, very kind of you. Thank you.
And I've been following you guys ever since. I listened to Black Harvest, which I think was coming out around then.
Yeah.
And I went back and listened to Woodland Rights as well, and I'm really enjoying the new album that's due out in November.
Oh, thanks.
Look at that segue.
Yeah.
It's called The Heathen Land, This Heathen Land, I should say. It is out on Nuclear Blast, like I said, on November the 3rd. I've been fortunate enough to hear the whole album, and I love it. It's great. I love
Thank God.
Like, yeah, I wouldn't be here, would I? A really embarrassing interview.
Well, you could be a sadist.
I could be. There are moments. But yeah, no, I really love the album. You've already hit 3 tracks out for the people to hear, so they can go off and hear it now. If they're watching this.
Yeah, that's right.
And you got out now, I think, was it Mountain Throne, Maxine, Witch Queen, and One for Sorrow.
That's right. Yeah, we dropped One for Sorrow a couple of weeks back, and it's kind of funny that, like, with us, we're such an album band that singles are a torture for me, because it's like getting, you're getting this little slice of the album without any of the context, and knowing that the album will actually be able to be listened to in a couple of weeks in full is great. But it's been really nice having the singles out actually this time around. It feels like each one is very different, and it's hitting different people differently, and it's really interesting to see.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I love the fact you guys like to tell a story, if you will. Like you have, like I say, these songs are like kind of chapters of the book, if you will, the ones that you've released.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is frustrating. I can see for a band like yourselves, like, you're giving people that kind of like, when someone releases a book and gives you like a sort of 3-page sampler in some random.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't get you get a juicy bit, but you don't get the whole context of why or what or where. But for those obviously that haven't heard the album yet, obviously I've been in that position where I have. But what can people expect from you guys from this particular album?
I think for me, it's the most Green Lung album yet. I think we know what Green Lung is at this point, and we really wrote it to that brief in a way.
Yeah.
More so than with Woodland Rights and Black Harvest, where we sort of got there by accident. I think Scott, coming from a more sort of classic rock point of view, and me coming from a more doom point of view, we both had like different ideas of what this band was when we started out, but they sort of collided, and now we know it's a sort of weird classic rock doom band. Yes. And I think being comfortable with that, and sort of knowing that that's musically where we're going, this album opened up a few doors for us. You'd mentioned the storytelling, and I love your chapter analogy. I think that's spot on. It's like it's not a concept album, but it's a thematic album that takes you on this sort of journey into occult Albion. That's your sort of subtitle of the album.
Yeah.
And the idea was like, the first 2 albums dealt with folk horror a lot, and the horror was a big part of it. In this album, there's always going to be a bit of gothic horror in a Green Lung album, but I kind of wanted to go more broadly into folklore itself and look at the folklore of particular places like Pendle in Lancashire, or like Dartmoor, or Avebury and the Standing Stones. It was sort of, I wanted to take people on a sort of imaginative journey around British folklore, really, and the landscape, and sort of on the way nod to some key figures like Maxine Sanders or whoever it may be. So I think that, yeah, with this album, more important than ever is listening to it from top to bottom, because it is supposed to be a sort of journey, and it's supposed to take you to places. And I think that feels like the most successfully we've done that. I think we were sort of halfway there on Black Harvest and Woodland Rights, and I think we got there on this album. And more mechanically, yeah, it sounds we had a whole month to record it. We had a lot more time to work out the finer details. We work with Tom Dalgetty, who has produced Opeth and Clutch and Ghost. It's got a bigger sound. I think it sounds like we were aiming for a sort of big Martin Birch, warm, big, epic heavy metal sound,
Yes.
you know, Mob Rules, Iron Maiden style,
Yes.
rather than thinking about, I don't know, Pentagram or more obscure Doom. So it does feel like it's the same, but maybe bigger and more epic.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, no, the production on this is definitely a step up on that front. And like you're right with the whole thematic thing, it does flow a lot better with this one as well on that front. But how are you gonna, like, because obviously the album tells these stories. How are you breaking that up live? What, because obviously you're going off on tour short.
Yeah,
You got a couple.
it's going to be fun, and I think it's still a work in progress. You know, with live, it's always developing sort of alongside. I think what we're really excited about is to sort of bring some of the sort of, you know, costumes and creatures and things that have been until now kind of only in the songs. Some things may be cropping up on stage. We've got Richard Wells, who's always done our art, to do a completely bespoke new sort of banner and set dressing for us, which is the first time. So, you know, as the band grows, we try to reinvest in some of those elements. Like it used to be that we were in a tiny pub and turning up with a giant prop, you're going to sort of be laughed out of the room. And it's kind of fun to have got the band to that level where you can go a bit more flamboyant with the stage stuff and have more fun. I've always seen us in the sort of Iron Maiden pocket of it's a bunch of guys in jeans on stage, but the world that we create is sort of behind us. And you know, you're not ever going to see me sort of dressing up like Lord Summerisle, but you know, there's some clear precedence in the sort of presentation in bands like Iron Maiden.
That's really cool. I mean, like getting to that point where you can actually act on that side of the art, if you will, because obviously, like you say, playing in pubs, playing in tiny venues, trying to sort of, you know, bring in theatrical parts is very difficult unless you're willing to, I don't know, take over the place for the night.
Yeah. Well, I always remember when we first did Woodland Rights, Scott's girlfriend was working at a houseplant shop and was like, I'll just get a load of like foliage to cover the stage. And I always remember someone on Twitter mentioning that like they'd seen Green Lung on the first Woodland Rights launch show where they could see the sort of labels still on the house plants that were hanging, which kind of, you know, it's about creating an illusion. And I think, you know, I'm not one of these people who's like not got a sense of humor and isn't self-deprecating. There's always going to be a level of Spinal Tap to metal music, whether it's like something like Sun or some incredibly scary black metal band. You know, they're still backstage doing their makeup, and I think it's going to be fun to sort of develop the sort of storytelling in the real world as much as we have on the records, I guess.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing it because I do hope to try and catch you at one of the shows you have coming up in the UK, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you're off to Germany in about a week's time, is that right? And then you're playing in Norway. Is it a festival in Norway as well?
Yeah, it's a festival in a deconsecrated church in Oslo on Halloween, which is pretty much my ideal environment.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, and
on, really.
it'll be nice to. It's a good run because we basically got offered the festival and this German show as well, and we thought we'd do a little run of German shows just to sort of shake off the rust.
Yeah.
Ahead of the UK tour, but it'll be nice to get back on the road. And this is the perfect time for Green Lung shows. Sort of autumn is upon us.
Yes.
I feel like, yeah, it's going to be fun.
It definitely the album I was listening, it definitely fit the weather, if that makes sense. There's a certain mood where I can listen to doom, stoner, sort of stuff. Generally, what it was like when I got the album, that was bang on. I had it on in the car, had it on in the house. Kids were asking me what it was, and no, that sounds like amazing. And obviously with the UK tour coming up, it's quite an extensive tour, I believe. I've not got the dates in front of me, but it's like a 2-3 week tour. Is that right?
Yeah, it is definitely the longest tour we've ever done, and definitely the biggest. I mean, I can't really believe that we sold out the Scala in London, and we're doing the Atrium Ballroom now, and that's just as someone who lives in London, kind of mind blowing.
Yes.
And you know, especially because the album's not out yet. I think that's what's really exciting. This is the first time we're going to release an album and then go on tour, because with Black Harvest there's a vinyl shortage, and we ended up having to do a bunch of tour dates before the album was out.
Yep.
And with Woodland Rights, we were self-releasing that record. We didn't have any, we had no idea what we were doing. So in some ways, we're 5 years old as a band, but or 6, and this is the first time where we've actually got a record coming out that we can tour, which just shows how fucking unprofessional our band is.
There's lots of
but yeah, we're finally doing it.
Yeah, no, this is it. I mean, there's lots of logistics when it comes into being like an independent band releasing stuff. I was in that position many years ago, and sort of back then it wasn't so bad getting stuff like made up, if you will, like the CDs and stuff. There was like always the threat of a big artist needing to use the pressing plant for their massive thing, which is still a thing now, especially with vinyl, because everyone's now releasing vinyl again. But being in that position to make sure you get everything out, it was prior to the digital kind of like send outs. So press wise, you'd be sending them physical copies of stuff, and whereas now obviously I've received this album digitally. I do intend to pick up vinyl copy. Thank
you very much. I think we've really had fun with the vinyl this time. I mean, we always kind of did, but Richard Wells and I were basically just nerding out on. There's like sort of map that comes with it that can direct you to all of the sort of locations mentioned in the album. There's like a full like booklet. There's some really fun stuff, and I think I'm a massive vinyl snob, and I would say to everyone listening, you know, the best way to listen to it is on vinyl.
Always, you see these things behind me. I've got a pair of them, and they can both play vinyl. I've got boxes surrounding me full of the stuff, so it's I can fully vouch for that. The best way to listen.
Yeah, it's nice to see it. It's nice to see a DJ with actual vinyl decks. A beautiful and rare thing.
Yes, it is. I do have. I'm not gonna lie. I do have the digital setup as well, because it's more convenient. I'm not gonna lie. Dragging vinyl.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've got a Spotify subscription. Don't worry.
But yeah, I've got like those like really useful boxes things full of vinyl like around me. There's like 6 or 7 boxes full of stuff, from dance to I don't know, weird avant-garde stuff that I've randomly picked up over the years from digging in various record stores around the world. I always go into somewhere and try and buy something.
Me too, and it's a costly habit. I don't know if it's worth smoking or cocaine, but it is.
I know. I see it safer than that, because one day you could come across like, you know, a really rare piece of work that could potentially end up being worth, you know, more than your entire collection. Whereas drugs.
Yeah, I've been looking for a bunch of records since I was about 15 that I've never ever seen in the wild.
Okay.
That aren't well, you know, that aren't worth like costing like 800 quid.
Yes.
And it's a lot, you know. One day at One Car Boot, I will find a copy of Leaf Hound's Growers of Mushroom. But until then, it's going to be a long old road.
I was going to say, you have to stumble upon those things. Like, it's going to be, if it ever happens, let me.
I don't think you can do it anymore, because I think the internet, everyone can just look up what an album is worth. It used to be that you know, people would have no idea what they had. Sadly.
Well, I used to live in America, and they used to have yard sales, which is kind of like the boot sale, but your own house. And those places, I mean, now there's a lot of internet channels that I've seen now of like thrifters that go around sort of bargains, but those were the place to pick up, because they have a box of vinyl, you know, they say $1 each or something, and you end up going through it, you'd find, you know, the usual Pink Floyd, you'd find Rolling Stones, you'd find all the sort of like big classic bands. And then suddenly you stumble across like I stumbled across a bunch of old hip hop records that I haven't seen since. And I daren't look on.
It's people who were chucking out their collections in like 2008-9 as well. But like people who were like vinyl's dead, CDs are the thing.
Yes.
There was like that was an amazing era. Or when someone dies and their kids are just like chuck it in the charity shop. But you just never find, you know, metal is so hard to find in that sort of. I've never been like, oh, it's an original Celtic Frost LP or something. You know, it's never. It's always just like yet another Tigers of Pantang sort of 5th album or something. No offense to Tigers of Pantang, that first record kills.
It's like random picture discs and stuff like that they think are funny, but it's not. but taking off on a tangent there. But all right, I've got a couple of questions left for you, if that's all right. Just to sort of round this off and let you get on with the rest of your. I know you probably got a few more of these to do today, and tomorrow and the next few weeks, and then the whole thing.
This is all I'm doing for now, from now until Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you're gonna do. But my final question for you are: the first one is 3 albums that were most pivotal in your life. So not necessarily, my favorite album is such and such, but the one that kind of like made you want to, sing, made you want to be a part of the music industry, or something that turned your head towards the sort of more doom stoner stuff when you were younger, something like that. The albums that
sure,
really took you there.
Yeah, I'll do albums that, because I love all music. I'll do albums that specifically relate to Green Lung, I guess.
Okay.
I'd say, and there'll be various degrees of quality. I'd say, I'm trying to think of like what the first like real, I suppose. So I went to see Cradle of Filth in Norwich when I was a Grebo kid, about 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And the band supporting them was Cathedral, who at that point were not, they weren't a well-known band, but they were getting support slots with bands like him and Cradle of Filth, who'd loved them as kids. And I just remember being at that show and immediately connecting with the whole. So I knew Sabbath and I knew enough to get the context for Cathedral, but for me it was like this sort of, Hopkins Witch Finder General, this whole Hammer horror thing. I was a massive horror film nerd, and they were in the right constituency of all of that stuff, the psychedelic stuff. I loved the sort of, I was a bit of a hippie as a kid, and I loved the fact that it was this sort of mix of like sort of hippie psych rock and the darkest metal. So something like Ethereal Mirror or Carnival Bazaar probably would be a big record in terms of setting me on to the doom thing.
Yeah.
And that was when I was really quite young. But then when I was sort of 18, Electric Wizard came out with their album Witch Cult Today, and it was like this moment where doom was suddenly like cool and sexy, and attractive people were going to Electric Wizard shows. I mean, I'd seen them before that on the We Live tour in like a tiny venue with no one really there, and then that album really, they were playing big shows. It was cool to be into doom, and that was a big moment for me as well, because I was a teenager desperately trying to sleep with girls and be cool, and it was really that album was a big moment for me in my teenage years. It was like, the kind of weird heavy metal I like is actually, there's a bunch of people who I can, there's a community around it, in a way that where I grew up in rural Norfolk, it was like me and my mate Dave in a small market town. And much as I love Dave, I needed more.
Yes.
So, going to London and getting into the London metal scene, and that album was always going to be very close to my heart, and still is every time I listen to it. And then finally, I'd say Power Trip's 2 records.
Okay.
Nightmare Logic in particular, that came out just as we were starting Green Lung, and I was like, Power Trip really got me back into crossover thrash for a start, but also it sort of taught me that you can be political, you can have hardcore punk ideals, you can, really like engage all of that stuff, the ethical stuff, the DIY stuff, as a big old school metal band. You can take a genre sound and really push it to its limits, like I think they did with crossover thrash, like I hope that we do with Doom and Stoner, like not just being happy to just do the same record again and again, innovate. Them and Turnstile, I think, are 2 bands that like I really look up to as modern bands that sort of did what I want to do with Green Lung, even though we're in a totally different genre, totally different part of the world. I think and it's a real tragedy that Riley died and that Power Trip is no more, because I think they would have been a headline band eventually. But I remember thinking in like whenever it was 2017 when we started Green Lung, I wasn't looking at like Cathedral and Electric Wizard as the band I wanted us to be. I wanted us to be like the Power Trip of doom.
Okay.
So those 3 are probably
nice.
What it's worth.
Nice. Yeah. That's a good like mixture of like, I mean, I can definitely hear those influences kind of within your sound and everything. But what, like, outside of the band stuff, was there any like another album that really kind of changed the moment for you?
Oh man, like there's so many. I mean, like I'm a huge Leonard Cohen guy.
Okay.
Which might surprise people. Like I think that the sense, as someone who writes lyrics, albeit in a totally different way. Like I'm not a musician. I can't read music. Scott is like a virtuosic musician.
Okay.
I am a person who has just spent all of his life reading books and being obsessed with words more than I have. I'm the words guy. He's the music guy.
Yeah.
And with words guys, it doesn't get better than Leonard Cohen. And I love like singer-songwriter type stuff because of the lyrics. So I'm a huge fan of Bob Dylan or the Magnetic Fields or whatever. It's like anyone who can really like bring literature to music outside of metal. And metal's funny because I think there are people who do that, and mostly at the sort of Roadburn, the artier end of metal. But you don't. I think the way I write in metal is not necessarily about trying to be literary. It's about trying to it's about impact and storytelling more than anything.
No, that's really cool. Awesome. But my final question for you, you've probably already answered this, but what are your hobbies away from the band? So what do you do when you're not, when you're not out of Green Lung, when you're not writing?
Well, it will come as no surprise that it's a lot of reading books, hiking.
Okay.
Like, I love being in the outdoors. We all live in London, but I grew up in rural Norfolk, and I'm always trying to get out into the countryside because I miss it. Horror movies, again, totally unsurprising, and just cinema in general is a total obsession.
Nice.
And folklore, any weird local museum is something I will, or strange, like ruined church, is something that is on the map when I'm out and about, is something that's going to be explored.
Nice.
And I like also drinking and eating and other things that humans do.
Yes.
As well.
Essentials. But yeah, no, I'm the same when it goes to like local towns and stuff. I always like to find the little like local museum. It's like little strange antiquities they have in there and whatnot. And just sort of like going around. I've got this like jigsaw of like the map I think you've produced into your album. I've got this jigsaw of like historic areas of England, and I put it together and the thing of going around them, and it's like ghost and haunted areas, and I'm into the sort of like that sort of side of it, like going to that kind of stuff, and if there's a ghost, that's even good. Not send one, but I hope to experience something. But yeah, no, I love doing that, like going to like random places and just sort of like exploring their local history and finding.
It gives you a way of. I think music and being obsessed with weird shit often gets you under the skin of places. Like if you go to Lisbon, or if you go to Berlin, or if you go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and the first thing I did was check gigs. Went to the Fiddlehead and that Fiddlehead show around the corner, and you're immediately with like your people. You're getting a sense of what the place is actually like. You're not looking at the Empire State Building. You're looking at someone crowd killing in a pit. And also like just being like knowing that I wanted to go and check out St. Vitus Bar rather than go, I don't know, to Katz's Deli. It's like it's like what's great about being into metal is that there's a community everywhere, and you can find your place, and that's a great thing when it comes to travel, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, Tom, I'll let you go. Thank you for joining me today. Good luck with the tour. Good luck with the album. Everyone, it's called This Heathen Land. It is out on November the 3rd on Nuclear Blast Records. Just gonna get the plugs in there and everything, so it's all good.
Plugging.
Thank you. But yeah, good luck with it all. Thank you for doing this.
Cheers.
And, I hope the rest of your day goes all right.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.